Can you believe it? It's been over 25 years since the original PlayStation was released. And I'm just thinking back to when we first heard of this thing. We didn't know it was going to be as big as it's become. You got to remember back 25, 26 years ago, Nintendo and Sega, they dominated the gaming industry. And for somebody like Sony to come along with what was originally a project that involved Nintendo and Sony for the PlayStation, they released their own system, and it just took off and exploded. And it's, we're here today about to get the PlayStation 5 end of 2020. And I just want to go through what is left in my small PlayStation collection. I had a massive collection back in the day. I also had a massive collection of pirated games. I had my PC, had a program where I could rip my own games, and I kind of stopped buying games over that period of time. But I did get rid of all of the original stuff to make way for the PlayStation 2. I said this before and I say it again. That's the way it was back then. We didn't think about keeping things. Retro side of gaming didn't exist back then. It was still a whole new, there wasn't even a term back then, I don't think. But to get the new system like the PlayStation 2, you would take your PlayStation and all your games into the shop to trade it in to get the brand spanking new PlayStation 2 with limited amount of games at release. And I remember that I think it was one of the Star Wars games, and that was it. I had to wait a hell of a long time for more titles to come along, and I think I actually rebought a PlayStation to fill that void for a while, and that was a crazy thing to do. But I've only got 6 games in this collection. 2 are original games that I had back in the day, and the other 4 are what I started doing last year, back in 2019, even 2018. I was going to have this whole idea to recollect certain games for the system, and it's just, I haven't got around to doing it. But let's just get into 6 games that I have in this collection. Let's start off with a game that I think was one of the first rhythm dance games. We all know about Parappa the Rapper. I could not get past the first level in that one. I don't know if it's just me, or is there something about that game. I just found it really difficult. I know I was hitting the buttons at the right time, but I don't know what that game was doing. It was not registering that I was hitting those buttons at the correct time. But a game that came along, which was released by Enix, was a phenomenal game. I love the soundtrack to it, and I could actually beat this game, and it was Bust a Groove. How many of you out there remember this game? I think they did a Bust a Move 2 in Japan. It's going back 25, 26 years ago, but I don't remember. So you, like it says on the back here, it's got 70s funk, disco, soul, 90s house and techno music. I just remember the battles you had to do against the other characters, and that was a good thing about this. It could be a 2-player game as well, so you battle your friends. But I love the music, I love the dance moves in this game, and it is probably one of the earliest forms of rhythm dance games that we saw, and way better than Parappa the Rapper. Now, I got this next game because I was a huge fan of a comic book series by J. Scott Campbell called Gen 13. They did another series called Danger Girl, and I've got this game. I recently picked this up, I think it was last year. It's a pretty decent game for what it was, a comic book. I think originally they were going to do a Gen 13 game as well, but that didn't happen. But great characters. It's kind of like an espionage game. I guess it's been a long time since I looking at this sort of stuff. It's a great game. Yeah, it's just unbelievable. I had to start hunting this stuff down again. I know also another game I really liked back then was The Fifth Element. That was really cool, and I do remember playing and finishing that. Now, a few years ago, I picked up this Final Fantasy game from PlayAsia. This was only about $24 Australian. I think you can still pick up some of the greatest hits Final Fantasy games on PlayAsia now, and they're still under, I think, about $30. This is the NTSC version, the American version. I have to have a modded PlayStation to play this on. I think by this stage I was well and truly feeling a bit burnt out from RPGs, and that would go on to PlayStation 2. I just don't know, the Final Fantasy games, I think Final Fantasy 7 was the last game in the Final Fantasy series that I started and finished. I don't even know if I got this, to be honest with you, but I saw this, it was going cheap. The cover art on that looks fantastic, so I thought I better grab it while it's still there, and it's a great display piece to have in a collection. I'm talking about Final Fantasy. Yeah, I picked this up back in 2017, 2018, down at my local shopping center where I worked at the newsagent. It was in this bargain basement bin with Gran Turismo. I didn't grab that one, but $2. I did have this back in the day and finished it. I thought for $2 I had to just, it'd be crazy if I didn't grab this. It was a great game. I'm looking forward to the remake getting released here on the 10th of April 2020, which is yeah, Good Friday, when everything is closed. So yeah, well done Square Enix, love that. Now this next game blew my mind. I first played it on the Sega Saturn. That's what it got released on first. I don't know if they had a window to have that game exclusively for a few months, but I know it was the first system that I played it on, and that is the original Tomb Raider, which is a fantastic game. To me, it was the best Tomb Raider game on the PlayStation. I played every other Tomb Raider game going right up until I think Chronicles was on the PlayStation. We had Last Revelation, Tomb Raider 2, 3, all that sort of stuff. But for me, apart from Last Revelation, which I love because it was set in Egypt and I had that on the Dreamcast, and Chronicles was okay, what I remember of it. But for me, this was the best Tomb Raider game on the PlayStation. 2 was okay. I've seen like somebody's done a remake on YouTube of the second Tomb Raider game. It's kind of intriguing now looking back, but I was really biased back then. This was my favorite Tomb Raider game, and I just couldn't get past it. The fact that the other Tomb Raider games, they were technically better than this one. More enemies. I mean, this was more about the exploration. You would kill endangered species, animals, and every now and again you would come across one of Jacqueline Natler's henchmen. But the other games had more characters and more enemies to attack and all that sort of stuff. But for me, this will always be my favorite Tomb Raider game of all time. I just think the first one just did it for me, and it just was phenomenal. And just so many times I thought I had gotten close to the end and there was another level, then another level, and that was something I hadn't experienced with this sort of stuff before. We had always had to deal with cartridges. With the advent of CD-ROM, and for the PlayStation to be a CD-based system, the world just opened up to us, and this one just was unbelievable. Now, I love anything to do with Egypt, and I still need to do a video on my Egyptian video games, but one game in particular that I really did love on the original PlayStation, which had an Egyptian theme to it. It's also under a different name in North America, but here in the I guess you could say the European Oceania territories, it's called Exhumed. First person shooter, phenomenal. In America it is called Powerslave. It's a great game. There is a difference between this and the Saturn version. Again, I played the Saturn version first. The Saturn version runs a lot faster. It had this glitch in it, a really cool glitch where if you threw the grenade down on the ground, it would do like a a grenade jump. It would hurl you in the air. It wouldn't kill you. It would take away some of your life bar, but the programmers used it to their advantage, and that wasn't in this one. But the layout in this one is a bit different from the Saturn version. So if you play this one or the Saturn version, it's going to feel like a little bit different game, especially with the main hub on this one. It was a little bit different, a little bit set out better. The graphics on this is way better than the Saturn, of course, but the Saturn still runs a hell of a lot faster than this one. I don't know if it was because our PlayStation, it probably was. It was probably because it was the PAL PlayStation in North America. You had NTSC, which runs at, I think, 60 hertz or whatever it is, so that's probably what it was. But for some reason on the Saturn, it did run faster on the PAL version, which is bizarre. But a great game. If you can track it down, if you're into first-person shooters, and if you're into Egypt mythology, this is a fantastic first-person shooter. At some stage, if I can stream this somehow, I'd love to do that. Love to show this game, and it's one of my recommendations. In America, it's called Powerslave. Great game. And guess what, guys? That is it. That is my sad little PlayStation collection. I love to maybe get some games back. If I was going to get anything back, it would be maybe, it wouldn't be Crash Bandicoot. Oh, those games were too difficult. It would be Spyro the Dragon. Maybe even the Broken Sword games. They were great. I love those back on the PlayStation. I wish I still had those. I don't know what else. I would have to go back and have a look at the list of games, the stuff that I used to love back then, and we'll see if I can rebuild it. But it's not one of my priorities for this year. Maybe I can check out the local second-hand shops here in Brisbane, but they're already being picked clean. I know that for a fact. Resellers go there pretty much every week, so whatever's there, I've seen resellers here in Brisbane. They've got YouTube channels. I've seen what they pick up, and for a couple of dollars, and then they sell it high on eBay, I guess. But that's, whatever. But it does give us who are looking to rebuild collections, we don't get those opportunities to pick up something that's really means a lot to us. And it's not about getting it because, oh man, I can make $150 on that. For me, it's not about that. It's about bringing back those memories of what was a great system, and a system that a lot of people didn't take seriously. Even Sony, they didn't know where to categorize the PlayStation. They put it under the battery section of their categories, which is bizarre to think, but it's a true story. But yeah, love to try and get a few games back in the system at some stage in 2020. I don't know. It's just a matter of what I really want to get back, and it's definitely not the other Tomb Raider games. This is the best Tomb Raider game on the PlayStation, and I'm not interested in any of the other ones. I got Revelations on the Dreamcast. I just need to get a Dreamcast so I can play it again. But yeah, okay, that's enough for me just talking about this. But leave a comment below. What was some of your favorite games on the PlayStation? Do you still own it, or are you looking at recollecting? Because there's a lot of us out there that, we get rid of this stuff to buy the new systems, and now here we are 26 years later. Retro stuff is just so important, and it is to serious gamers like ourselves that just want to get those memories and bring them, just have them back in the collection. That's it. Until next time, guys, see you later. Bye.